we can start to do introductions, if you can just explain who you are and your purpose for being at this meeting about Sendiass today, and then I can just sort of add anybody else in as they come in. Would that be okay?
That'd be wonderful, thank you.
Yeah, if I just start with myself, then I'm Deborah Clements and I'm representing Family Voice Peterborough today. As I was just saying to Zoe, I've hopped on at the last minute, so I'm just sort of playing catch up a little bit. But hopefully I'll sort of tune in as we go along. And in the meantime, once I get to know who's here, that'll give me a little bit more of an idea as well. So Zoe, you'd go ahead and introduce yourself, I'm guessing, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Zoe Redfern-Nichols. I work in the Children's Commissioning team, which works across Peterborough and Cambridgeshire. So generally, we all have different focuses within the team. My focus is generally on services for children with disabilities and SEND. So, you know, some in the social care side of things and some of the education side of things. So if I just go down the list, so we've got Izzy with us today, who's also from the Children's Commissioning team. Izzy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, like Zoe said, I'm Izzy Thompson, work with Zoe in the Children's Commissioning team, Peterborough and Cambridgeshire, and I'm just here today making some notes as well.
Thanks, Izzy. Should I go through the names, Deborah, that I can see?
Yeah. Sorry, Izzy, what was your surname?
Thompson.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, if probably it might be an idea. I'm not sure who Alan is, but I know who Marion is. So perhaps Marion might like to introduce herself as well.
Hi, I'm Marion Dealey. I'm the manager of the SEND Partnership Service here in Peterborough. So Sendiass, known as Sendiass or SEND Partnership Service. Oh, that was a mouthful.
And Alan, is he on the Peterborough? Sorry, Alan, are you on Peterborough City Council?
I'm Alan Thapsford. I'm the chair of the stakeholder steering group.
Okay, thanks. And then I'm guessing that the other people we have here are parent carers. Would you like to introduce yourself? Or you can do it sort of as and when you'd like to, or I can pick on somebody, but I'd rather not put you on the spot.
I don't mind introducing myself. My name's Rosie Kaur, that's K-A-U-R. I'm a parent and an interested party, I guess, here today. My son has a diagnosis of autism and he attends Heltwaite School in Peterborough, hence that's how I got this invite. So I'm just really here to understand, I guess, just more about what's coming in terms of provision and just how I might be able to support in any way.
Great, thanks, Rosie.
Yeah, if you can hear me, because I've got a bit, I'm just at work and my headphones, I'm not sure they are working properly. My name is Edita and my son is Philip. He's attending Heltwaite School as well. He's been diagnosed with the autism around 3-year-old, and I always want to gain as much information as I can about what we actually can, of the way actually can, how we can help him.
Thank you. I can see that we've got Christine as well.
Yeah, are you able to introduce yourself, Christine? I think it's Christine Fisher.
I'm Christine Fisher and I've got 3 autistic boys who've got a rare condition, all non-verbal.
Thank you, Christine.
Thank you. Yeah. Sorry,
I think that's everybody.
Sorry if I sound as if I'm not responding. I'm trying to scribble things down and sort of talk to people at the same time.
I might be scribbling as well, so forgive me. I think that's everybody. Do you think so, Deborah?
As far as I can see at the moment, yes.
Okay, wonderful. Might have more people arriving as and when. I'm going to try and close this participant list without accidentally leaving the meeting. There we go. Good. Okay, so we've arranged the session today, obviously, to talk about the SEND Information Advice and Support Service, as Marion said, also known as the SEND Partnership Service. Partly because we've been working, so Children's Commissioning have been working with the service more closely, probably over the last, I've known Marion for many years, but over the last year, in terms of seeking funding from health into the service. and which we have been successful with, I'm very pleased to say. And in terms of the monitoring of the service, so with Children's Commissioner responsible for when we've commissioned a service, we then have kind of monitoring arrangements with that service, which is slightly different when the service is internal, so internal to the local authority, but it's quite helpful to have those arrangements in place anyway, because then we're basically supporting the service to demonstrate everything that they do and the impact that has on families. So this felt like quite a good time to be able to liaise with parent carers directly about your experiences of the service, if relevant, and what's important to you as we, you know, put things like a specification for the service together, which is kind of a description of the service and what we want to have achieved with the service. It felt like a timely point to liaise with you at this point when we're putting that together. Sorry, that was slightly roundabout. Can I ask, given we've only got a few of you here so far, would you mind if I ask if you've got experience of the service? If we start with Rosie.
Years ago, Nan and I have liaised with regards to parent partnership service, but that's about it really.
Okay, thank you. Adita, if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Yeah, Edita. To be honest, I don't have quite a lot of experience. It's just at the moment I've got the information from the council that they going to do some changes just for the education healthcare plan, and as I actually try to contact them and have some information, no one really responding that, so I think I need to, you know, have some more information about that, and is the way if I can really, you know, put them under pressure to actually do this something positively instead of all the time just try to reduce as much as they can.
With you. Christine?
What do you mean, information in what sort of thing?
So are you familiar with the Sendiass service or the SEND partnership service? Have you made contact with them before?
Not directly made contact with them, but
okay.
My 3 boys have got EHCPs.
Yeah.
One's going through now, actually, ready for September.
Do you think it would help, Marion, to just give a brief overview from your perspective in terms of kind of what the role of the Sendiass service is and at what kind of points you usually liaise with families?
I'll just pop in there, sort of, Zoe, and say that we have actually used the service in the past to support supporters at a meeting to get the right sort of put into an EHCP plan. And you know, and that was very helpful, and sort of, you know, we had some very good information. And I know Marion has also in the past, before lockdown, I don't know if it's happened since, actually had surgeries at Family Voice as well, so that people can come along and ask questions.
Yeah, that's correct. Yes, I have. We haven't done that through lockdown because obviously we were virtual. We did have a couple of virtual meetings quite early on in lockdown, but they, I think other things took over and they weren't so well attended at that time. So we've let those go on hold. So our service can provide impartial advice and support with regards to children with special educational needs and disabilities. And that advice can be for education, for health, or social care. We can be involved at any time, whether the child has an education, health and care plan, or whether they are in a setting and are just under special educational needs support. We can advise parents of their rights about their child's education, and also for the young person, once they're over the age of 16, to advise them directly of their rights. We can be involved during the processes of an education, health and care needs assessment or a review if you've already got a plan, or when you get issued with a notice of amends following a review, or or if you get a decision made by the local authority which you don't agree with regarding your plan or regarding the placement for your child, and we can support and advise through the appeals system, through mediation and tribunal. That's just a snapshot.
So it's a good snapshot. It's quite wide ranging, isn't it? Because it would, parents could, can make contact, at any real stage really, whether that's talking about like early stage of SEN support in school, or whether someone has already got an EHCP. It applies to that whole kind of pathway as a whole, if you like, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. I don't know whether we can, this might be a no, but I shared the results of the recent Sendiass survey with Louise, Deborah. Is it possible to have that up on screen, or is that a no? You're on mute, Deborah.
Yeah, apologies, because I've had to come in on my phone. I've not got the access, ability to share the slides. So
okay, no problem. Sorry, can you just give me 1 second? I've just got someone banging at the door. Sorry about that. So we recently, as you might have seen, because it went out by a number of different channels, including, the council's social media and Family Voice social media, we did a bit of a survey. So the next part of the focus group, I wanted to really touch base on some of the responses that we got to the focus group, if that's okay with everyone. So I think that Louise sent out the kind of summary of those responses. What I wanted to touch on initially was something that Louise had said to me actually earlier on in the week around the name of the service. As you can probably, as both kind of Marion and I have indicated, it's sometimes described as kind of send information, advice and support, and sometimes described as a send partnership service. So in terms of what we do going forward, I wondered whether there was a general kind of preference really, because within the questionnaire that we put out, we described the service as send information, advice and support, but whether, I would be interested to know whether people have a preference.
I think for me, it's just all about simplicity, really. And I wasn't aware what Sendiass stood for in terms of the acronym, but I think my only preference would be that it's just short and clear. So happy either way.
Thank you.
I think that the terminology of Sendiass and Send Partnership is something that tends to be used sort of on a more national basis. And although it might be better for people trying to access it if they understood what it was more by the name, equally, if people coming in from other areas who are looking for that service, they might be looking for something that they're familiar with, so I had that sort of concern about when the local offers sort of the idea of it being sort of a send hub, whether people would understand that if they're sort of from other areas.
Can I come in on that?
Absolutely, Ellen. Yeah.
The term Sendiass is very much one that was decided by the Department for Education. When these schemes started in the first place back in the 90s, they were just simply called parent partnership schemes. But we've now moved on to much more technical jargon. It's just a problem that we're stuck with.
Do you think it is a bit technical jargon in the sense of it's then generally referred to as the acronym rather than the full? Because I think the phrase information and advice and support is quite helpful because it shows, it demonstrates what the service is.
That's right.
But obviously we then tend to go back to the acronym, which might be less clear for those who aren't already familiar.
I think if you're wanting I don't know if you want me to chip in here, Zoe, or not.
I was going to put to you to see what people describe you as. See what people
Well,
describe you
a
as.
lot of things, and probably neither of those acronyms.
Yeah.
But no, I was going to say, from a national perspective, I think more services are now called Sendiass than they are partnership services. So
Okay.
I think when they first went over, there was a mixture of both, but I think more as things have expanded and as we've got more into the reforms and everything else, that the Sendiass acronym is used, and because it does explain what it technically what it does.
But I think for access purposes, it isn't always clear. And I say to people, there is so much support out there, but so often people just don't know how to find it. And I'm not technically minded, but I'm sure there is a way of actually, if people put in parent support as a search term, that the different things like Sendiass can be linked up so that will come up, you know, alongside. I don't know the technical term for it, but I know you can sort of search, and as I say, sort of Sendiass will come up if you put in sort of parent support or you know, keywords.
Yeah, that's something we can follow up with the local offer, because I also think at the moment on the local offer it's described as send partnership. If I'm right,
it is at the moment.
Yeah,
it is, but it's linked to any one of those words. So technically, if you use the abbreviation of send, or if you use the word partnership, or if you use the information support, each one of those words should link it to our service. Albeit it's still a minefield getting through the local offer, as we well know.
Yeah, generally there's quite a lot of work into making it a little bit more intuitive. So as Deborah said, if you put in something that's a little bit more generic, parenting support, it's taking you to like somewhere that's related.
Yeah.
Okay, that's helpful, thank you. It's probably about, it sounds like generally speaking we're heading towards describing as send information, advice and support, but I suppose it's making sure that we've got that consistency. And in terms of things like the local offer, making sure that if somebody does type in send partnership, it still takes you to the same place, which it sounds like that's what happens now. The next element I wanted to touch on really was where do parents go to find, if you're wanting to seek out information or support or talk to somebody about kind of SEN support or EHCPs, where would you naturally go? Is the local offer somewhere that you go to seek information? Because that's one of the areas that we asked questions about in the survey, and I don't think as many respondents as we were expecting knew where to go or knew about Sendiass in the first place. So where would you go to seek information now?
So I tend, if I'm honest, to use other channels. So I don't access the local offer. I probably don't access as many kind of inverted commas official channels as I should. And I think some of them can be quite overwhelming. I tend to use social media. So I tend to get a quicker response, an authentic sort of parents' take on an issue and where to go, through various Facebook groups, and also the Family Voice Facebook group as well. So I tend to go for that just for reasons of speed, authenticity, speaking to like people in a like position to myself, and it's served me well so far, I think.
Would you look to like Peterborough City Council Facebook page as well?
I wasn't aware of that page, but I probably would add it to my kind of list, if you like, if it was a valuable source of information.
It's interesting that you say about social media, because we've been talking about how we link, you know, if information is put out about the service, for example, whether we also get that posted via PCC social media, but it's how well that's used by different people now. So
Yeah.
but we obviously would share with Family Voice as well, who are great at resharing, you know, any information that they think is helpful. So that's
Yeah.
helpful. Did anyone else have any? Sorry.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Thank you. Did anyone else have any? Would you go through similar pathways? Would you look at, you know, kind of different groups on social media rather than go to like a, you know, more official sites in terms of the local offer?
I think that there is. I will go actually mostly the same side like the previous lady, because to go like more on the official side, it's quite difficult. I find it, and to gain information about how you can use it or how you can get the help from there, it's also difficult because there is no one really actually the one who, like I said, no one gives you advice. Okay, there is something you can use. There is something quite good, or there is anything else, and so this can help. And specifically, if you try to gain some information like from the council, it's quite difficult because the people that were actually responsible for that, they tend to mostly just try to put everything on a side. They are not quite helpful in this case. So the most is like the social media or just someone who has similar like experience or have some information. I think that the social media is the most of just. I wasn't aware also about the website from the council as well.
Thank you, that's helpful. Yeah, as Marion said, there's quite a lot of effort that goes into making sure that the local offer is a little bit more easy to navigate, if you like. But I think that can be quite challenging because if you don't necessarily know exactly the thing that you're searching for, which you wouldn't necessarily know, that it can be more difficult to find. So I can understand why that might be. Christine, would you say similarly? Would you go to, you know, people with similar experiences rather than trying to seek information through like local offer or the council's website?
Well, I find everything on the internet confusing at the best of times. Like, I wanted some information about legal rights because my eldest, who's autistic, all three of my kids are non-verbal, and yeah. I've been told that all my rights when he's 18 have gone out the window. If he has a car accident, the hospital can choose whether he can have, say, a blood transfusion or something. It's took out of my hands. Yet I got told to get like a power of attorney, but then he can't talk, so he can't have a power of attorney because he cannot tell people that he wants me as his power of attorney because he don't talk. Then I was stuck. Then I couldn't find any information. And then someone told me I had to be a deputy if he can't talk, because even though he's 18, he's only got the mental age of a 4-year-old. And I don't know anything from now. Even him starting college, I wouldn't know what course to put him on or anything like that.
So you're also more likely to go to other parent carers or groups that you know to go, this is a situation, what would you advise, rather than trying to?
I tend to give up in the end. I will go to like the autism support groups.
Okay.
To find out what their experiences are, or the school. And that's about all charities that I've been to, like Little Miracles or Family Voice. I'll go to them.
Okay, thank you.
I think I attended a meeting on transitions last week, and I think there is an enormous difficulty around this transition to adulthood, where sort of school ends and suddenly, as one person described it, as a bit of an abyss as to, you know, and I think that is something that probably needs to be sort of, is that something, Marion, that Sendiass can assist with?
We can advise, but or point them in directions of other services, really, because from the age of 16, a child with an education, health and care plan has the right to make their decisions about that plan. And as Christine's just saying, that's very difficult for a child who is non-verbal, but equally is functioning a lot lower than their their age. But yeah, we wouldn't always be able to provide the support, but we could perhaps signpost them, as we do to Family Voice sometimes, as like Family Voice signpost to us. So we do a tit for tat on that one. And the same with Little Miracles, very useful. They provide other support that we don't do. So yeah.
I think that the kind of emphasis on transitions is reflected in some of the like in a lot of the discussions we're having within children's commissioning, because you know Sendiass do offer support or kind of advices. You know, it can be up to 25 as reflecting, you know, the legislation and the same code of practice, but actually in other areas, you know, in social care, for example, the provision can be quite different because the legislation is quite fixed in terms of like 0 to 18, and then 18, as you say, Christine, you know, on paper that young person becomes an adult, they're a young adult. So actually, you know, that they're kind of what's available for them and what support is available is quite different, which I can imagine does feel like there's a lot of change at that fixed age, despite the fact that actually in the same code of practice there's a lot of emphasis on what needs to be available for those that between, you know, the young adults between 18 to 25.
And I think it's not just knowing where to look and what terms to search, but also knowing what you need to ask as well.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
It probably leads me on, because my next question was around kind of preferences for contacting services. I think on the, you know, information that's shared about the Sendiass service is got a phone number, but I know that that's not always people's preference. So I wanted to talk about what people's preferences were for making contact with different services for information, if it would be giving them a call, or preference for email.
I think, from my point of view, I think, you know, for initial inquiry, a phone call with somebody is a good starting point. Probably followed up by email, you know, to sort of give more information or ask more questions, but just sort of knowing that you've got somebody there that understands what you're asking and that you can make an initial contact with.
Yeah, and really talk it through. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that the phone call is better on the first time. But yeah, the problem is sometimes that you don't know what to ask for, and I find it's actually quite difficult. And that's why maybe there is on the, you know, the people they try to actually put you on the side or just try to avoid everything, which I actually was my experience. They try to contact. It's quite a lot of, it's quite difficult when you actually try to gain some information or try to, you know, help with something, or just you want some help and no one really actually is willing to help you.
Thank you. You went a little bit quiet there, but I think I caught most of what you said. Thank you. Marion, is that generally how people, have you been asked whether, you know, can we make contact in a different way? People, it sounds like generally, you know, particularly when people want to talk things through and get that advice, is that, you know, that initial phone call works quite, well, it sounds like it generally works quite well, but is that something that you've been asked before?
Yes, I mean, we have obviously we have the phone number, we have emails, and then when they've made contact, we do have so we then use our mobiles and we can have text conversations with parents. I think the majority of the time it starts with a phone call in, and whether that is a phone call in that where they just leave a message and a number, and then we start the the trail by calling them back. I would still say that's probably the highest number of our new contacts coming via phone.
It's phone rather than email.
Yeah, I think so. And though we are a parent-led service from the point of view, or a young person-led service, we do have other professionals that will come through to us on behalf of a parent. And, you know, long as they've got permission to share details, so they've got permission to contact us and vice versa, then we can carry that forward. But it's normally an initial one is a phone call. So.
Yeah, it wouldn't necessarily always be parents contacting you directly. As you say, it might be that professionals got in contact to say, you know, obviously we've got permissions, but can you make contact around around this case and give you a bit of information? Yeah,
long as the parent or the young person has given their permission for the professional to contact us, we'll accept referrals that way as well. It's absolutely fine.
I don't know whether you record this, but do you what's the, I presume the majority of your contacts is from parent carers, but how many young people do make contact directly?
Very, very low. Very low. It's usually through their parent. If it is for a young person over the age of 16, it's normally through their parent, and then we ask whether that is still suitable to have that conversation, because they have a right, they have their own rights to have impartial information given to them. But I would say in the main, those young people will say, yeah, we can do it through mum or dad or whoever is their main person. And quite often we'll defer to that person rather than even have a conversation with us. So they may well be listening into a conversation, but wouldn't necessarily be speaking to us directly. But that's entirely up to them.
So it might well be that when young people are over, 16 and over, that you're getting their view, but it's not necessarily them that have made contact with the service.
No.
Yeah.
And quite often, parent will ring in and say, I'm ringing because my son or my daughter are going on to this and we don't know what to do. And very similar to what Christine was saying, you're still leading it as the parent, even though they are of an age where they can make a decision. They will defer to their parent a lot of the time, or their carer.
Thank you, Marion. I suppose it brings us on to one of the next points that I'd put down around having, we've got information about the Sendiass service on the local offer. It goes out in a lot of the communications with our statutory assessment team. Schools and Senkos would also have information, but we don't currently have that information available in different languages and in easy read kind of versions. I wondered whether people would find that helpful. I think that should be looked at further. I don't know whether it's something that Family Voice are approached about much in terms of information being available in different languages, Deborah.
Well, yeah, it is certainly something. We have sort of various nationalities and language requirements. And, if it's quite difficult for us to find our way around in English sometimes, then it's going to be even more of a struggle for somebody whose first language isn't English.
Yeah. Does anyone else have a view on that?
Yeah, I think it will be quite useful because I am not English, and I can manage quite a lot of things, but maybe sometimes it's missing. And actually, if there will be something in my first language, I will appreciate to have that information, to be honest.
So even if it's making contact to say, I can see that this information is available, can I have it in an alternative language? If you can make that request, that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Marion, has there been conversations before about having any of the, having easy read information available to kind of describe what Sendiass is on the local offer as well?
Yes, and what we've done recently as a eastern region of Sendiass services, we're looking at doing animation videos, little videos, YouTube type things, so that people can click on them and find out about different services and different processes and procedures. We haven't necessarily published anything in hard copy that's easy read, but I'm sure there are services out there that have got easy read, but we haven't done it here in Peterborough. But again, sometimes it's difficult, and it comes down to costs, and it comes down to how we get that out in that service, from that service. So that's why we more lately, as I say, we've gone down this little video clips, so it talks people through it, but there's animations to go with it as well to help people.
That's quite nice as well when you've got quite a lot of text. Generally, a lot of the information is very, very, a lot of it's in the written format. So even, just being able to describe something in a different way, kind of irrespective of what your first language might be, is quite nice, really.
Yeah.
I think that brings us on quite nicely to we've been speaking about having at the moment the information, as I've said, about Sendiass is largely on the local offer, but we've been discussing what a kind of more separate kind of website for the Sendiass service might look like, what we should include. It was really helpful points actually made in the survey around what could we include of on the Sendiass website. Is there anything from your point of view that you would seek to have on there? So let me have a look at the responses. So we'd let me have a look. When we put the survey out and specifically asked that question, what would be helpful on a kind of Sendiass website? Obviously, we had lots of people coming back with things like, the contact details of the service, how to make contact. Some people said actually information on a range of different, SEND topics might be good. I think we could link back to, the local offer for some different areas. And what also came up as a response was having almost kind of a pathway style guide, kind of I presume like through the process of looking at SEN support and what the process might be if you wanted to look at an EHCP, or the assessment for an EHCP as the next stage. Is that something that you think would be particularly helpful to have that we don't access at the moment? I can see you're talking to me, Deborah, but I can't hear you.
Yeah, I mean, this is something I'm very keen on, but the idea of sort of flow charts and things like to make it quite simple and sort of fairly visual as well, sort of, in easy steps rather than lots and lots of text.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you get asked for, or kind of commonly, requested information that if we were to have, a website specific to Sendiass, you'd think that would be good to include?
Well, I think it's clarifying where to go for support and what the different organisations can provide. I think this is probably an obvious one, but the summary that Marion gave sort of at the beginning was the main thing on the website, on the homepage, is this is what we can help you with, so that people know whether they're in the right place or not.
Yeah, we said I think we spoke this week, Alan, about that in terms of being able to say what is Sendiass, but what is it also not. So if you're wanting to request a formal assessment, that this is a separate service, but this is where you go for that. So to be able to say, you know, outline what Sendiass is, but also outline what it isn't, but where you go for that information.
Yeah, I think we also need to be encouraging other services to be clearer about what they're supposed to be offering as well, and particularly think about the problems over transition. That's supposed to be a priority, but it seems to be one that parents after parent report back is a nightmare for them, and we really need to encourage the local authority to do more about transition.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think there's more information now on the local offer around preparing for adulthood and transition, but yeah, in lots of feedback that's come up as a theme. So there's clearly still a lack of clarity around what the offer is when you get to those key points. Anything else anyone thinks in terms of a website that you would want to see? No.
I suppose if we are going to encourage young people to actually access it, and not just young people, but people with sort of different, you know, needs in terms of visual or sort of auditory needs, is to make sure that it is sort of presented in different formats. And I know this goes for all websites, but you know, one of the things I'm having difficulties with now because of sort of eyesight problems, and I'm kind of getting an insight into how other people experience these problems, is coming up with these things with reams and reams of text that you've got to wade through to try and find the information that you need.
And that's generally nobody's preference. People don't want to wade through reams and reams of written information to get to what they need.
That can be even harder. That can be even harder when people are expected to wade through all that information on a screen.
Yeah, I think it can.
It's a more difficult way of absorbing information.
Yeah, I think it absolutely can. But we can, when we've started to design what that will look like, it'll absolutely be kind of like iterative. So if we get feedback about the website, that's something that we can make changes to. I know I always kind of ask our local offer colleagues as well whether we can easily make it so people can feed back to say, I didn't find what I was looking for on this page, or you know, this didn't make sense. Because it needs to be something that evolves over time, doesn't it, in connection with the other information that's available. Thanks, Rosie.
Thank you.
Oh, it just popped up. Thank you. Okay, the next item I wanted to focus on was around the outcomes for the survey. So really, what do we want to achieve, you know, with the service? What do we want the impact to be? So when we got the responses back, our kind of top responses were around feeling supported to navigate the special educational needs process, feeling listened to and understood. What else have we got here? Got feeling able, excuse me, to make an informed decision, which I thought were quite interesting. Thinking about what the Sendiass service is there anything else that you think we could describe as a kind of outcome? You can absolutely like muse on that point. I have asked, presuming Louise has said, Deborah, but if we can send the specification out to everyone that's here today so they can have a little look at the specification and make any feedback or comments about anything else that they want to think should be included. Obviously I've written it, it's been written from a, you know, a local authority perspective, and we need to make sure that like feedback is always really, really helpful, I find. Okay, and then I wanted to touch on, sorry, I keep flicking between screens. One of the discussions that's been had probably over the last probably six months or so, particularly as Peterborough work more and more closely with Cambridgeshire, is around the kind of the possibility of there being a joint element to PCC's Sendiass service, so Peterborough's Sendiass service and Cambridgeshire's service. So it was really important for us to bring up today that if we did want to look at a joint service, what would be important, you know, as a Peterborough parent, what would be important to you if we were considering, you know, having a joint nature to the services? I know, Deborah, thank you, Christine, sorry.
Well, now, because all my kids are non-verbal, their safety is a big thing for me. Like my rights as a parent of who can look after them, and them being, I think is it CBR checked? I can't remember.
DVS now, yeah.
Get that information from, and because they're non-verbal, like my son's 18 now, and if hopefully not, if I'm out and he goes missing, because I'm dealing with the other two who are non-verbal, what my rights, is there like a thing I can put his name on to like contact the police to know that he's autistic and he's non-verbal, and like where to find me?
Thank you. So going back to what we would want on the website, to have a bit more generic information or links back to other information on the local offer around support available would be quite helpful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I just say, thinking of Christine's situation, would it be useful if the website had a question and answer section where a parent can post, this is a concern of mine, and then somebody somewhere, I mean, in the case of safety, when you're out, there's an issue there with the police and with.
But but I'm thinking, but I'm absolutely thinking that like transitions social workers in up to 25 would be absolutely able to advise around that. So I can totally see what you're saying, Ellen. Sorry, I talked over you a bit there.
No, that's fine. I think the opportunity for parents to ask a question, and even if and for somebody somewhere, whether it's in the Sendiass service or in the council, to come back with a response.
Yeah, whether it's social care, whether it's somebody from health, whether it's somebody from education. Yeah,
worth looking at from the council's point of view as a whole, really, because it's all to do with citizenship and having access to the right services, isn't it?
Yeah. We can speak to the local offer reps. They like a question from me. I ask lots of questions about what we can do with it. Just going back to.
They may not like that question. They may not. Like
they may not like that question, but I'm going to pose it anyway. Yeah, it's quite difficult. I've had conversations with them before about that feedback element, as I said, into, you know, if we've got a page on Sendiass or short breaks or preparing for adulthood, whatever it may be, having someone come feedback directly and say, you know, I was looking for XYZ and it's not there. But I think even that feature was slightly difficult. So we shall see when I pose that question what the answer is. I'm just conscious of time. Just going back to the element around if there were to be, you know, a joint element to the service across Peterborough and Cambridgeshire. A lot of the points that Marion and I really wanted to prioritise were making sure that there's, you know, if there was a website, that there was different areas for Peterborough and Cambridgeshire, because some of the information's obviously can vary. Was to make sure that, you know, like Marion and her team have such a wealth of knowledge around, you know, Peterborough, the makeup of Peterborough, the, you know, the processes within the local authority, they've got relationship with schools. You know, it's all Peterborough specific, and it's all really valuable and kind of honed. So we were thinking that actually one of the most important aspects of any kind of joint service is to make sure that there are, you know, staff specific to Peterborough that were able to, you know, that had that information, that had those experiences, you know, those relationships with schools, so that there'd still be, you know, Peterborough specific staff and Cambridgeshire specific staff within the service. Is that something that would make sense to you in terms of if we were to look at a joint service, still having members of staff that had that knowledge and had that skill set?
That was the one thing that I was going to raise, was local knowledge and the importance of that, because although you've got overriding sort of legislation which doesn't apply individually to one area, you've also got the importance of how that sort of impacts on sort of the local demographics and as you say,
yeah, as much as the legislation might be the same, there's always going to be slight differences to how, you know, local authority processes, and you know, there's real differences in like the geography of the two different areas. So yeah, that's something that we really thought was important. Is any other points on that? No? Okay. Weren't any other kind of specific questions from me, which is probably good because we've only got 4 minutes left. But is there any other queries or points that anybody wanted to raise around Sendiass specifically?
How come that, I've got disability children, how come they're not, well, so like health and that, how come they're not like priority for like dental treatment? Or I know I get family fund, which I can't access right now because you're not getting back to me. I've applied 4 times, try and get a disability pushchair for my younger son because he's outgrown it. How come there's not priority for that or funding for it? Like mine are non-verbal, but to get me onto a course to learn sign language, even on benefits, is expensive.
I'm probably not I'm afraid to say I might not be able to answer that question. I know that health are under quite a lot of pressure at the moment in terms of any sort of appointments, because they've obviously over the past 2 years with the COVID pandemic, a lot of their resources has been in managing that rather than, you know, they're getting on top of their caseloads, whether that's, you know, kind of annual health checks or dental appointments. I know that people's operations and procedures and things like that have been delayed, so that might be a question for, you know, your GP, for example. But I'm not well versed enough to be able to know the answer, I'm afraid.
Can I comment on that?
Yeah, absolutely, Ellen.
I think Christine's questions are that's a really good question.
Yeah.
I think one of the other things we need to think about is that while the Sendiass service is in the business of offering information and advice to parents, we're also in the business of listening to what they've got to say and what they're worried about.
Yeah.
And I think the service has a role in actually feeding back to the local authority and health authority on behalf of parents about what their concerns are, along similar lines to Family Voice, because we've now got health engagement in the project. They're funding, they've committed themselves to fund part of the staffing of the service in the future. So we need to find ways of getting them, encouraging them to listen to us, speaking on behalf of parents, it seems to me.
Yeah, because Marion, presumably, and Bob, now I can see that you're here, presumably there are lots of questions that I know you're very knowledgeable, so there's probably not a great deal you can't answer. But you know, if it's a health specific question, you don't necessarily, you know, you can't necessarily give a definitive answer. But presumably there's certain questions that do come up and you think, oh, actually, it'd be good if I could put these, you know, to social care, to health, to be responded to.
Yes, as Alan was saying, I think we have, you know, that's part of our role is to feed back to the other services. We certainly do that through, if we felt necessary, through our steering groups. However, I think probably we have certain amount of contacts ourselves where we can raise issues, but they're done very much on an individual basis. But I think what Christine's probably bringing up here, she's not the only parent in Peterborough asking those types of questions about how she gets access for her family, and things like that. And that does need to go to wider and higher up the chain in health and social care.
And it's not just questions that you're passing on; it's worries and things that matter to you that aren't being addressed, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
Maybe that's something that we can think about, where that you receive questions that, you know, Sendiass, that aren't necessarily within Sendiass to kind of give a definitive answer, whether we can speak to our health rep as well, but whether we can kind of pose those like on a, you know, a like monthly basis or quarterly basis, so whether it's social care or health, and say, and then we can publish these, because everything that Christine's raised, as you say, Alan, isn't going to be specific to like Christine and your family. It's going to be a concern and a thought and a question of lots of other parents as well. Yeah, and I'm sure Bob, for those of you who don't know, Bob is my equivalent in Cambridgeshire, who's just come into the meeting. I'm sure he gets the same type. I won't speak for you, Bob. I'm sure you can.
We do get the same type of question, and as both you and Alan have said, one of the key requirements of Sendiass is to feed back to local authority, education, social care, but also health as well. Where it's not directly related to the area that we cover, we would still feed that back as we're required to do. I think we are in a fairly unique position in that we cover such a wide area and speak to so many parents, young people and children. That feedback is absolutely crucial.
And another thing, things aren't done as a family. And like, I get bus passes for my kids, which I'll have 3 of them soon, but why should I have to take 3 different bus passes on the bus? Why isn't there like a family one?
Again, I don't think you're the first person to have asked that question, so that's a valid question to put forward. Thank you. Thank you all. I'm conscious of time, but I just wanted to thank you all for your time. That's been really, really helpful. I've asked Louise or Deborah to share with you all the specification that we've written for the Sendiass service. So that's outlining, as I said, what the service is and what we want the service to achieve in terms of outcomes. But yeah, thank you all. That's been really, really helpful.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, I understand that
Thank you very much.
Is actually sending that out or has done already. So if for any reason, just let us know. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Deborah.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.